Video game sequels often have two ways of going: iteration and innovation. Huge AAA games now take so much longer to produce that 90% of games go down the more iterative choice for a sequel, to the point where it's almost starting to be viewed like a bad thing that people see as DLC. But I don't think it should be. Usually you take the pieces of what's brilliant about the first, iron out the bad, try to find that perfect blend. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to most was the jack of all trades but a master of Star Wars. Jedi Survivor keeps Respawn's status as Jedi Master when it comes to Star Wars, but irons out so many issues that I had with the first game, while adding just enough to make the sequel stand out on its own measure as the best Star Wars sequel for me since Empire Strikes Back. Now, full disclosure, I am a massive Star Wars fan. I enjoy pretty much all of it. I recently got to attend Star Wars Celebration 2023, which reignited just how much I love this franchise. But I think this game is that good that even if you've never seen a Star Wars movie or played a Star Wars game, you will love this game. This video is going to be spoiler free. I'm going to make a separate video of all my thoughts about the story and diving deep into the ending. So just what is it about this game that clicks so much? I often joke about the old video game phrase that it makes you feel like Batman, and so on and so forth. But Respawn really do give you that fantasy of being a Jedi in their most devastating era after the fall of the Republic and in fact the Jedi Order. The way others respond to you in combat and in social situations like you're a myth, a legend that they can't believe you're there, and that comes across in the gameplay. I'm going to keep it pretty light on plot points for this game, but in the words of Luke, this is not going to go the way you think. The story of this game, it shocked me if I'm being honest. I was thinking to myself a little bit before the release that, they've done Vader and the Inquisitors, what more can they do? The story is left in a place where it could have been a one and done thing, and that would have been fine for the first game. This one takes place 5 years after the first, and I for one, I welcome this time jump. It allows for more character development, and it's really cool to see how the characters responded in those 5 years and what they've been up to, and how the brutal time had kind of treated them. One thing that immediately lends itself to peak Star Wars is a good crew, whether that be the original trilogy, the crew in Rebels, or just Mando and Grogu having the adventures around the galaxy. The crew here are all so different with unique personalities that are even more fleshed out here than in the first game, with meaningful moments of heart and character. Cheesy one-liners, greasy money baby. They all get their time to shine alongside welcome new additions that fit right in and make sense to me. One thing I praise Respawn for that often gets criticised by some fans in the Star Wars community is the abundance of fan service. But Respawn, if they're going to go for a cameo, it's not out of place. It adds to the story, to the scene, and it makes sense. The overall theme of this story, it differs from the first game. The first tackled the theme of how people cope in different ways to depression and failure, and what that looks like. This one begins with, well, why do you keep fighting? Why do you keep going when what you're doing and what you're sacrificing isn't making a difference? Hal is weary after 5 years, and things have really taken its toll. He's gave a lot, and he hasn't got much back. I really think Cameron Monaghan did a terrific job with Cal in this game, and his performance is probably his best yet. I really hope he gets a shot at live action one day, and generally, the performances on the whole here were really good. Particularly the one of the new character Bode, and man, I just love Merrin, she's so good. Overall, I love the story of this one, and I'm going to cover my spoiler thoughts in a different video of why this one worked even better than the first for me, but I will say this. This is a Star Wars story. There are moments where I literally had to put the controller down and just take it all in. Set pieces, jewels, cameos, it is that full Star Wars package. Respawn avoided the common video game sequel failing where they find some nonsense way to strip you of all your abilities and power from the first game and you go through the journey all over again to regain that power. The first game did this, so it wouldn't have made sense. Instead, you get everything that you learned in the first game right from the get-go here, and that is the smartest decision that they could have made. In the first one, we ended with 2 saber stances, the single saber and the double-bladed saber. In this one, Respawn gives us 5. Those two, the dual saber stance, which was kind of teased in the first game but it never got properly developed due to time constraints, the blaster and saber stance, which is so cool, and the crossguard stance, which is your kind of Kylo Ren looking thing. Every stance kind of has its pros and its cons. The crossguard stance is meant to be your more kind of tanky, like a Claymore in the Dark Souls series, longer to hit but for more damage. But you know what I love about these games? They aren't obsessed with damage numbers or modification. You have your 5 stances, you have your skill tree, and that's that. There's no add this lightsaber part for 0.2 dexterity or some crap like that. Your power is your ability to use your stances, the force, and the skill tree to the best of your ability, and that's what's going to guide you through the game. So many video games now are just obsessed with gear score, and I enjoy those aspects in some video games, but it's creeping into games where it just doesn't fit. Speaking of which, I'm kind of not your biggest fan of hard video games. Bloodborne was the first Dark Souls game to click for me. I've beaten that, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. But I don't usually opt for a challenge when I'm playing video games. I kind of just like to turn my brain off sometimes. These games, they're different for me. The Jedi games are different to the point where I advocate actually trying a more challenging difficulty. Because for me, the combat, it excels when you play on a more challenging difficulty. You parry at the right time, you use the right move to stop an enemy attack, you use the force to stop an attack that you can't parry, learning when to strike. I mentioned before you feel like a Jedi, but on those higher difficulties, as you've learned these things, knowing when to strike, it makes the immersion, the game, even better for me. You're not mindlessly spamming attack buttons, it adds depth to the saber battles too, makes them more bejeweled, more cinematic, and less spam as many buttons as you can. I still appreciate the fact that there is a level of depth to the difficulty here, so for anyone that is struggling, you can just toggle it, and I really like that. It's not just a Dark Souls game where there's one option for difficulty and that's it for everybody. But, like I say, I appreciate that the difficulty here, it enhances that Star Wars Jedi experience.
That guy really didn't like you.
The one major bummer for me was the stances themselves, in terms of 2 different aspects. The first is that you can only have 2 stances equipped at one time, which means that kind of early on you're going to have to make a decision of what stances you want to max out and what you want to use. Otherwise you're kind of going to be a jack of all trades and you're not going to get to enhance the abilities to which you need for those tougher boss fights. The second is that there's no real incentive to kind of switch your stances on the fly. Overall I mean the crossguard and the blaster pistol stance, but there was no fluid animation between them or a reason to switch other than the fact that the pistols were better for crowd control and the crossguard was more for my saber and duel battles. Speaking of Souls and Bloodborne, let me tell you, I ain't gonna lie right now, it was so cool being able to use the blaster to parry an enemy like it was Bloodborne, and we haven't had that in a video game for so long, and it never got old. It was such a fun mechanic, I really loved it. It's kind of like a Star Wars sequel for Bloodborne. I'm going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. There's also something to be said for the combat in terms of just how good it feels against enemies. Dismemberment applies to pretty much everything now, both living and droids, whereas in the first game it was only on droids and beasts. This helps further the immersion. Also, you've got to commend Respawn. There is such a wide variety of enemies to fight in this one. More diverse beasts, droids, droidicas, stormtroopers, purge troopers, dark trooper sentries, and a few that I won't spoil and I'll let you discover for yourself. They all behave just like you'd imagine, and the battle droids are hilarious. The humour in the Clone Wars TV show is one of the best things about that show, and they're written just as good here, so if you loved it there, you're going to love it here. I still don't quite love fighting the big beast, it just doesn't feel great to me. But, that being said, the melee combat, especially in lightsaber duels, gets me every single time, and some of the boss battles in this game are going to blow you away. I've mentioned a lot just about how much I feel Respawn gets Star Wars. Every iconic Star Wars story has a cool cantina with their big jazz vibes. Every Star Wars protagonist has a dope looking jacket at some point. Every Star Wars crew has a lovable droid that you would die for.
It's okay.
Every Sith and Jedi battle has a memorable environment and moment that they fight in. Every Star Wars product has a score that elevates you to being in that world and gives you all the feels. Also, before I carry on, let's be honest, BD-1, he is the best droid in Star Wars, and it's not even close. Thank you for your time. Now, everything I just mentioned, you might not fully agree with me on this, but the people who work on this game are fans, because they put into the game what fans would put into the game if they were to work on it. The first game had us customise Cal with just ponchos and customise his saber with colours and parts, but that's kind of where the customization went. This game, it goes above and beyond, customizing every single detail of your lightsaber, and even accommodating that customization to what stance you use. So if you're using that sick Kylo Ren crossguard, you can customize the vents, and you get an up close and personal preview of how it looks every time you customize it. It really works. You see the workbenches and think, ah man, here we go again, I'm going to add a part and it's going to give me +5 strength, but that's not it. There's so many workbenches here, and every time I saw that I thought, oh no, there is at some point going to be some kind of gameplay boost, but it's not. It just wants you to keep refining your lightsaber and your Cal to exactly how you want them to look, and I think that's amazing. Cal himself has way more customization this time round. You can customize his hair, his facial hair, his jacket, his shirt, his pants, and man, some of these jackets, they are peak Star Wars jackets, let me tell you right now. One thing I always say about Star Wars is that you have to have that level of wackiness and that charm, and it retains that. From callbacks to the first game, to Turgle and Scuba, to some of the best named achievements I've seen in the video game. But let me tell you, there is one moment in the story that is the loudest I have laughed at in a video game since probably Marvel's Spider-Man back in 2018, and if you know what it is, you know. Shout out to my boy Rick. Listen, I know I've not mentioned performance here, and it's a crying shame that the game launched in the poor technical state that it is, but patches can solve that. Patches can solve a great video game. If this was a poor designed one, then no, but this is different. So therefore, I've got a little bit of sympathy, and that's not on the devs. We all know who's to blame for that one. I'm personally waiting to start New Journey Plus until they do some performance patches, because now I've 100% of the game and done all the achievements. I do want to dive into that, but I just want to wait for another perfect experience. To be honest, there's so much I didn't cover here, which I'm going to save for a different video where I talk all about the spoilers, but right now, overall, I feel comfortable in saying this is my favourite Star Wars video game of all time, surpassing KOTOR, Battlefront, and even the first Jedi game. If Respawn can carry on with this level of quality, we're not just looking at a brilliant trilogy of Star Wars games here, but we're looking at a trilogy that can rival that of the very first original trilogy that sent Star Wars into hyperspace in the very first place. If you enjoyed this video, then please do consider hitting that like button. It would really help me out, and I would massively appreciate it. And if you love Star Wars and you're looking for more Star Wars content, then please do consider subscribing, as you're in the exact place you need to be. I'm going to dive deep into the spoilers of this game and what made it so special as a Star Wars game and to me in a future video, and I'm so excited to dive into that. Other than that, have an amazing day, and I'll speak to you soon.